On behalf of District Governor Soraya Wagner Gustav and Dr. Virginia Asin Osberg, lead for the Rotary District 7030 Childhood Obesity Prevention Program, I warmly welcome you all to the 5th Annual COP opening lecture of the Rotary Year 2025-2026. We appreciate that you took the time to join us in this lecture. I acknowledge the presence of our distinguished past district governor, PDG Sonia, and other dignitaries from our district. My name is Riaz Gokul. I am the past president of the Rotary Club of Paramaribo Central. I am also a past member of the District 7030 Childhood Obesity Prevention Program team and still an active supporter of the program in our club, in our country, and in the district. Tonight, I will be your master of ceremonies. Before handing over for the opening remarks, I would like to break down some ground rules. Your microphones will be muted during the presentations. There is a chat box and a Q&A box, and also an interpretation language option. Feel free to share comments and/or remarks in the chat box. After each presentation, there is a 10-minute Q&A session. Make sure you enter your questions in caps in the Q&A box. During the Q&A session, the speaker will address your questions. If the 10 minutes are up, he or she will continue to type in the response in the Q&A box. At this time, I invite District Governor Soraya to bring opening remarks and officially open the lecture. DG Soraya, I hand over the Zoom to you.
Thank you. Thank you so very much. And good evening. Good evening, fellow Rotarians, Rotaractors, Interactors, distinguished guests, and friends across District 7030. It gives me great pleasure to welcome all of you to our Childhood Obesity Prevention Program's opening lecture for the Rotary Year 2025-2026. This evening's event marks another meaningful step in our district's ongoing commitment to one of the most pressing public health challenges of our time, childhood obesity. This was just recently borne out in a UNICEF report, which revealed that sobering truth, that for the first time in recorded history, obesity has overtaken underweight as the most common form of malnutrition among school-aged children worldwide. But this is not a distant issue. It is a reality that affects our very own Caribbean communities, our families, our schools, and our children. Our Rotary District has long recognized the importance of nurturing healthy communities. And since the 2020 introduction of the Rotary District 7030 Childhood Obesity Prevention Program, or COP, as it is now affectionately known, we have worked tirelessly to raise awareness, drive education, and inspire change through initiatives such as the 7030 Moves for COP, which sought to galvanize members and other stakeholders to prioritize movement, create healthier spaces, and bring visibility to the cause. These efforts, while impactful, are, however, just the beginning. Our work must expand beyond individual action to address the structural and societal factors that perpetuate unhealthy environments. So as we continue this mission, we must recognize that tackling childhood obesity requires more than encouraging individual change. It demands a collective shift in the systems and environments that shape our children's lives, from the food they consume to the policies that govern access to healthy choices, and even the design of the communities in which they live and play. Hence, this lecture's focus on tackling the obesogenic environment. This evening's lecture brings together two exceptional speakers who are here to help us explore these issues more deeply. So we have Dr. Rosamond Adams, a global leader in public health, will present the latest international data and contextualize the global dimensions of childhood obesity. His insights will help us frame our local efforts within the broader landscape of public health challenges and opportunities. Ms. Francine Charles, a passionate advocate for civil society engagement, will discuss the critical role of civil society organizations and service clubs like us, Rotary, in leading advocacy and driving systemic change. Dr. Rosamond Adams and Ms. Francine Charles will be introduced more substantively a little later in the program, but we are extremely grateful for their support and presence here this evening. As Rotarians, we have the privilege, and perhaps even more importantly, the responsibility to be agents of change. Through collaboration with government, civil society, and our communities, we can help reshape the environments that influence the health of future generations. So as we listen, learn, and engage this evening, my hope is that we are sufficiently motivated, not just by the urgency of the crisis, but by the promise of what we can achieve together. Our children deserve nothing less than our full resolve. So this really is a call to action. Our theme does not merely ask us to recognize this crisis, it calls us to address its root causes, to reimagine our environments, and to inspire sustainable solutions. So together, let us tackle the obesogenic environment and champion the health of every child in District 7030 and beyond. It now gives me great pleasure to formally declare this session open and welcome everyone to what will undoubtedly be an exciting, insightful, and inspiring lecture. Thank you for your presence, your partnership, and your commitment. Thank you.
Thank you, DG Soraya, for your opening remarks. Our first speaker is Dr. Rosamond Adams. Dr. Rosamond Adams is a National of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. He is a medical doctor by training, a public health specialist, and a bioethicist. He holds Master of Science degree in both public health and bioethics. He also holds a postgraduate certificate in global health diplomacy. He is the advisor for health, systems, and services at the Pan American Health Organization, World Health Organization, country office in Suriname. Dr. Adams has over a decade of work in various public health fields in the region in areas of disease prevention and control, health systems strengthening, bioethics, and sexual and reproductive health. Dr. Adams was a director of the Pan-Caribbean Partnership Against HIV/AIDS, PANCAP, from 2000 to 2002, where he ensured that HIV/AIDS remain a relevant public health issue despite the diverted attention to the COVID-19 pandemic. Dr. Adams is currently advisor, health systems and services at the Pan American Health Organization, World Health Organization. He is also the chair of the board of directors of the Caribbean Family Planning Affiliation, CFPA. Dr. Adams, the Zoom is yours.
Thank you very much, Piers, and good evening to everyone, Rotarians, fellow panelists, Francine, participants, and all who are online. It's a pleasure to be with you again in another lecture. I think that I've participated and presented in most of these lectures to speak on an issue that is of public health importance to all of us, and that is the issue of childhood obesity. But apart from being a public health issue, I think that we all have a moral obligation to also respond to this issue of childhood obesity in order to protect the health of our young people, but also for the future generations, because these are who will be the ones who will guide us into the future. And so our obligation is to ensure that they grow and that they thrive in an environment that is healthy and that they remain healthy throughout their life course. Before I go into my presentation, I would like to engage you in 3 simple questions, and I'll ask that you utilize the reaction button at the bottom of your screen. I think it's a heart button. If you click on it, then you can see various reactions. You can feel free to use the thumbs up or the heart button. And so I'm going to ask 3 simple questions just to engage you as we begin. And the first question is that 1 in 3 children in the Caribbean is overweight or obese. If you think that that is true, just give me a thumbs up, give me, some hearts, some reaction. If you think that 1 in 3 children in our region is overweight or is obese. Great, great, great. I can see that they're coming in. Excellent. So I think that most people know this data already. The second question is that when we speak of a health systems response, and as they would the MC would have said when I was introduced that I'm the advisor of health systems and services at the Pan American Health Organization. And a lot of times we hear about health systems and we hear about health systems response. But what do we really mean when we speak about having a health system response? And so the question that I'm engaging you in is that when we speak of a health systems response, we're referring to medical services, we're referring to the participation of communities, we're referring to individual participation, and all other actors such as Rotary clubs, NGOs, civil society, etc. If you think that that is true, give me a thumbs up, give me a reaction. Great, great, great. I'm seeing the reactions come in. And finally, the last question is that civil society organizations, service clubs, NGOs, they should be part of national plans to tackle chronic diseases such as childhood obesity. So when there is a development of a national plan, we often hear that there's a national plan for cancer, there's a national plan for diabetes, there's a national plan for childhood obesity, and so forth, that lays out concrete strategies on how a country will respond to these disease areas. And so when we speak about the development of these national plans, civil societies, service clubs, NGOs, etc., should be part of these plans, especially if we're looking at developing a plan to address childhood obesity. If you think that this is true, give me some reaction. Excellent, great, great, great. So as I go into my presentation today, and was said in the introduction, I'm not really going to bother you with a lot of statistics. I do have a lot of statistics. Some of them are very complex statistics, but I want you to leave with an important one. It is simple, but it is very, very important. And that is 1 out of every 3 child in our region is either overweight and obese. And this is very important because when you look at that, that has significant public health implications, and we're going to discuss that during the presentation this evening. So, childhood obesity is a growing public health crisis, and it continues to burden our region and the countries in the Caribbean. It is one of the most pressing public health challenges of our time because it has far-reaching implications. It has implications other than health, but it is also a very difficult issue for us to tackle. It increases the risk of non-communicable diseases such as diabetes, hypertension, cancer, heart disease, etc. And beyond health, it impacts on education, it impacts on productivity, and on national development. When we look at the impact on education, there is lower academic performance of children who are overweight and obese. There is increased school absence because then they get sick more frequently. When we look at the impact that it has on lowering productivity, there is job discrimination. There is also a reduction in social and mental skills. And on national development overall, parents do have to care for these children. When they get sick, then they have to take time off and so forth. And all of these do have a cascading effect in terms of the impact that childhood obesity has not only on the child, but also on the parents, on the family, on the community, and on a country. The Caribbean, as we know it, faces a double burden of malnutrition. Not so much in terms of undernutrition. We have done tremendously well in reducing malnutrition in our region, but there are some pockets still of malnutrition in terms of undernutrition. But the issue of childhood obesity, I think as we decrease and as we tackle the issue of undernutrition, what we've been seeing happening is that of overweight and obesity increasing. So we're still dealing with that double burden of malnutrition in the Caribbean. And so today's overweight child is what is going to become chronically ill adults and is going to take that burden into adulthood. And that is why when I said earlier that the implications are far-reaching. We often will think that, oh, this child is fat or this child is overweight and they're going to grow it off. And there are a lot of myths and misconceptions there. But if we do not tackle it now, then these children will become chronically ill and will start developing diabetes, hypertension, and other chronic diseases that can have far-reaching impact. So we need to respond now. Why do we need to respond now? Is that the epidemic is rising rapidly across the region of the Americas and especially in the Caribbean. As we know it, the Caribbean has a very high burden of non-communicable diseases, actually the highest for the region of the Americas. Childhood obesity leads to the early onset of NCDs, mental health issues, it reduces life expectancy, etc. And the prevention of childhood obesity and overweight is very cost effective than treatment in the adult. So it is better that we focus our efforts in reducing overweight and in reducing childhood obesity now than to wait until they get into adulthood and try to treat these complications, because then it becomes more costly to treat these complications, whilst the treatment and the interventions for overweight and for childhood obesity are very easy and are very cost effective. And I'm going to speak to some of these later in my presentation. But the UN Sustainable Development Goals and other goals that we have for our region have called for ending malnutrition in all forms, not only in terms of the undernutrition, in terms of diseases such as kwashiorkor and marasmus, but for malnutrition in excess in terms of obesity and so forth. The region's future productivity depends on healthy, active children. Again, as I said earlier, we have an obligation to ensure that they're healthy, that they thrive, that they grow, and that they live in an environment that is healthy. And so if we produce healthy children now, we're ensuring that we invest in the future and that, you know, we are able to have productive adults in the future. In terms of some statistics and looking at the global perspective of childhood obesity, over 390 million children and adolescents aged 5 to 19 are overweight and are obese. And since 1975, this prevalence has quadrupled. So again, we've seen a trend where there have been tremendous work to reduce malnutrition in terms of the deficit, but we're seeing an increase in terms of malnutrition, in terms of an excess. And I'm going to speak to some of the reasons why we've been seeing this in another slide. The highest increase are seen in low and middle income countries, including some of our countries in the Caribbean, and the obesogenic environment is what is pushing this increase. These are driven by the availability of cheap, ultra-processed food and sedentary lifestyles that we all know that are the leading factors that are contributing to childhood obesity. So childhood obesity is not only an individual issue, it is an issue that that we all need to tackle, and it is also a systemic failure. So it's not individuals. So we say, oh, they're getting fat. The environment is also something that is pushing them towards that. And so it's more than just looking at individuals, looking at families, and looking at communities. We also need to see how we can change the environment, because you can do all the things that you want to do in terms of trying to eat healthy, trying to have an active lifestyle. But if you have all of these distractions around you in the environment, it is very easy for you to go there. And sometimes the environment presents no options and no choices, and you're just in this, and so you become part of this. In terms of the Caribbean picture, approximately 1 in 3 children is overweight and is obese in our region. And I want you to take this away. If you don't take anything away from my presentation, take this away, because then you can consider, oh my, this is actually 1/3 of the children of our region that is overweight or that is obese. And the rate is also rising very, very fast in our region than in other region. And this is due to high consumption of sugary beverages, the availability and the use of processed food, and reduced physical activity in schools, at home, etc. And then there are cultural norms around body images that are also pushing the issue of childhood obesity, issues around urbanization, where there are lots of buildings that are being built, but there are no parks, there are no place for people to actively participate in physical activity. And as we know, we're in now the digital transformation generation, where children are spending substantially large amount of time on devices. And so the time that is spent on screen is actually worsening this challenge that we have. So childhood obesity is shaping the next wave of NCD epidemic in our region, as we see more children becoming obese, as we see more children becoming overweight. It is actually leading to more chronic diseases, diabetes, hypertension, cancers, etc. The social and economic impact is far-reaching. Obesity contributes to all the onset of these diseases. Families face emotional and financial strain from managing these chronic conditions. Imagine you have, a child that is 10 to 12, and then they develop a chronic disease, and they're overweight. And the burden falls disproportionately on lower income families and vulnerable communities. So you have, a lot of families who are poor, in low socioeconomic status, and then they have to deal with this and deal with other issues. So it's really not just a health issue, it's a development issue, and it is also an equity issue. And that's why I mentioned earlier that we do have a moral obligation to address this issue, because it is disproportionately affecting those who are socioeconomically disadvantaged. So when we speak of a health system approach, and why a health system approach matters, is that health system is not only physicians and patients. Health system is not only health facilities. A health system approach means that we all are participants, and we all have a role to play in this. The WHO lays out a number of what we call building blocks for health systems, and it speaks to issues such as governance, information, financing, service delivery. A lot of time when we speak about a health system approach, we tend to focus a lot on service delivery, especially medical services, but it addresses issues such as human resources, medicines, and health technology, with people at the center of it. All of us at the center of this health system approach. And so if we do not think of a health system approach in addressing childhood obesity, we are going to get it wrong. We have to make sure that we have all of these building blocks and ensure that we have interventions that addresses all of this in addressing childhood obesity. So for example, isolated interventions, they're not enough because the problem, as we see, is multifactorial. It's not up to a child, it's not up to individuals, it's communities, it's the environment. And so we need to ensure that the health system approach integrates all of this, and we look at issues such as health promotion. We focus a lot on prevention. We ensure that primary health is engaged, because primary health is the first contact we have with health system, and that is where prevention and promotion is focused. The issue of policy and regulation, ensuring that that there is policy around marketing of sweet and sugary beverages, looking at nutrition in school, looking at taxation for these, but also having surveillance and data systems, because without surveillance, knowing what is happening, and data systems for us to monitor and see what is happening, then we can take action. Community participation, the community is going to be very integral, and the community is a very central part of this. And so strengthening each of these building blocks can help us to create an environment for healthy choices. So just as an example, in terms of using the health system approach, when we can map out all of these building blocks in the health system and look at examples of how do we address childhood obesity using this building block. So when we look at, say, service delivery, we can look at, say, school-based nutrition and physical activity programs. These can be implemented. When we look at health workforce, we can see how we can train teachers, how we can train nurses in lifestyle counseling, and there are many other interventions that we can fit into this block. And I think that this is a very simple, but it is a very practical tool that we can use, and we can say, okay, if we want to address childhood obesity in terms of service delivery, what do we need? What services should we invest in? If we want to say to address the issue of health information system, other than tracking BMI, other than tracking nutrition indicators and so on, what other information do we need to address childhood obesity? Of course, financing is very important. We need to have budget allocated for prevention programs. We need to also strengthen governance, because there has to be policy on these, in terms of policy on sugary drinks, policy on food labeling, and we have been working and we have been doing a lot of this in our region, and community engagement in terms of partnership with civil society organization, partnering with service clubs, and in the inclusion of the Rotary Club and so forth, and all of these activities that we have been doing. what is then the role of civil society and Surface Club? And I'm going to just go through this very, very quickly because I know that Francine is going to elaborate a bit more on this. Civil society organizations, Surface Club like Rotary, are trusted community actors. And so in terms of the whole of society approach, we can amplify advocacy for healthy lifestyles. We can mobilize communities and schools. Don't leave it up to governments. Don't leave it up to parents. Don't leave it up to families. Don't leave it up to churches. The service society, civil society organization and Service Club do have an important role. And your role, sometimes we think that, you know, we diminish our roles, but we are very, very influential in the health landscape. Civil society organization can bridge the gap between health services and the public, and they can support already health initiatives other than childhood obesity. The Rotary Club has been very, very instrumental globally in supporting initiatives such as polio and cancer. And their reach, trust, and volunteer spirit, it makes them really good allies in health system strengthening. And sometimes where there is trust, where trust have been reduced in terms of the traditional government health systems and traditional systems that can be a bit bureaucratic, civil society organizations tend to help to accelerate and advocate and bring communities closer to health issues. Some examples of civil society organization and Service Club actions. They have been involved in school-based programs, community gardens, and in our previous lectures, we have heard examples of some of these: public awareness, fundraising, advocacy, etc. And this is where I think as civil society organizations in being part of this whole health system approach, this is our niche, and this is where we can really amplify the work that we do as civil society organization, as service clubs in addressing these issues. There are some that, you know, we have to leave for traditional government institution, ministries of health, you know, so surveillance, the data aspect of that, they have been doing that. They're very good at that. But when it comes to issues around advocacy, when it comes to issues around raising additional funding, public awareness, and getting communities involved, I think that we do have an added advantage here. And our role is equally as important as their role in terms of a health systems approach. Building partnership for sustainable impact is very important. We need to integrate civil society organizations into national NCD action plans. A lot of times action plans are developed by ministries of health, but our role as service clubs, CSOs, NGOs, etc., need to be elaborated in these plans. Not only I mentioned that we participated in a consultation or the Rotary is going to do that, but what is going to be the role of civil society organization, of service club in an all of society and in a health systems response. We can provide capacity building. We can also promote joint accountability, intersectoral collaboration, and leverage youth and women's participation and others to participate jointly in these. So as I close, I think that, you know, this is really a call to action. When we speak of a health systems response, it is a shared responsibility. I don't think any of us can respond to childhood obesity individually. Even persons who are overweight and are suffering from childhood obesity, they can't do it alone. Their physicians can't do it alone. The parents can't do it alone. Communities cannot do it alone. Ministries of health cannot do it alone. It is a collective challenge that demands collective action by all of us. And so we need to also embed ethics. As an ethicist, I do push for, you know, for fairness, for collaboration, for equality, because all of this can help to shape the environment and to nurture healthy Caribbean children. So I end by saying that together we can ensure that the next generation grows strong, grows active and healthy, and it is an obligation that all of us should come together and work collectively to address childhood obesity. So thank you very much, and over back to you, Chair.
Thank you, Dr. Adams, for an enlightening presentation. It is a very sobering thought that we really and truly have a childhood obesity pandemic happening in the world. I invite Victoria Morpurhu to lead us through the Q&A session. Victoria, I hand over to you.
Thank you, Vias. Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm Victoria, and my kids just got up from bed. Excuse me. I'm not seeing any questions in the Q&A. Do you have any questions for Dr. Rosmond? No. Okay, then I have one question. Dr. Adams, thank you for your presentation. So the DG Soraya was talking about a recent publication from the UNICEF, and it revealed that for the first time in history, the percentage of children with obesity has surpassed the percentage of children with underweight and malnutrition. So what does this mean for the extent of the problem, specifically in the context of the systems approach, the health systems approach?
Excellent question. So for centuries, we have been battling malnutrition in terms of the deficit, where people did not have sufficient nutrition. And so it created a wave of response in terms of let us end malnutrition. However, with that, there was not the thinking that we will get to where we are in terms of malnutrition by excess, overweight, and so forth. But that in itself is not, is not intentional. We're living in an environment that is so prone and is so and so pulls us to do things that we don't even consider that is obesogenic. For example, we want to get something to drink quickly, and it is a drink that is sweet and sugary. We want something to eat, and it is ultra processed food that is easily available. So the availability, they're available at our fingertips. Sometimes they're even cheaper, and sometimes they're even tastier. So the children gravitate towards them. But then there is also a market that they know that children are attracted to these things, and so there's a lot of promotion attracting them to that. The thinking is that, if they do that, they're going to become obese, they're going to become overweight, and it is creating a health issue. There's not that thinking. The thinking is economics. The thinking is convenience. The thinking is that
They like it.
It's just a choice. But I think that we do have extra work to do as public health practitioners, because we have to ensure and we have to educate parents. We have to also educate the children, because sometimes they come into contact with these food, and the parents are not wrong to say don't eat this. But also there are other issues other than just diet. There is the issue of sedentary lifestyle, where children are spending more time in front of screens, and they're not taking part in physical activity. So I think the magnet that is pulling you towards obesity, towards overweight, is very strong. And there is really not a big shout about it. when you see it on the other end, where you hear of families or communities that are going through famine or do not have available resources, we tend to pitch in and we tend to help and we tend to help them solve that. So the issue is now, as we tackle one, we're moving towards the other. And we need to really, again, it's not going to be individuals, families, communities. It has to be all of us, even policymakers, that have to ensure that we put measures in place to protect our children and to protect the future, because they're the future. They're the ones who are going to lead us into the future. And if we're creating a generation of ill and of children who are going to be chronically ill, then our future definitely does not look very well. So we have to see, how can we encourage healthy eating? How can we encourage physical activity? And how can we ensure that people are aware and conscious and are able to make healthy choices?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, the food industry is it's a battle, and they have way more money than the preventive health industry, or science. I see another question in the Q&A. How can we navigate expensive food prices and eat healthy to avoid obesity?
So that is always a question that is being asked again. Unhealthy foods at your fingertip, maybe cheaper, but we have to make a conscious effort. We have to say, buying something that is cheap and quick, at the end of the day, it is going to have you're going to end up spending more money, because it's going to get you ill. You're going to get sick, and you're going to have to spend way more than investing maybe a few more dollars on buying fruits and vegetables and investing in eating healthy. So immediately, right away, you may not see it financially and economically, but in the long term, when you have a chronic illness, maybe even into medical consultation, in paying for medication, that you spend a lot of money out of your pocket. So I think we have to make that conscious choice, that this is a healthy lifestyle is the way to go, although it may seem a bit more expensive. But from the public health point of view, we have been encouraging communities to invest in backyard gardening, because then that makes things a bit more affordable. So you grow your own fruits, you grow your own vegetables. We have also been advocating, discussing with governments, etc., to implement policies to increase taxes on healthy foods and subsidize foods that are that are healthy. I am hopeful. I think that we do have, I think, a generation also of young people that are very health conscious and want to ensure that that they're living a healthy lifestyle. But then again, when you do look at the reality, it is so easy to fall in the trap, because the marketing, whether it is on television, whether it is by social media, they make all of these ultra processed food very, 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 very attractive. And when you look at healthy foods, they're not attractive. It's green and red and yellow, and it's fruits and vegetables, and you need to take time to prepare it, and you may prepare it, and it may not be that tasty. But the reality is, again, I think we have to make that individual choice and say, I need to do this, because at in the long term, you definitely will have to pay the price for it.
Okay, thank you. So I have, the questions are coming in. Anastasia White, Rotary Club of Kingstown. She says, "Hi, Dr. Adams. I'm not too aware of policies in place, but from my standpoint, I do see schools being more intentional with implementing sports. So that's a step in the right direction. But my question is, what policies have been proven effective in reducing childhood obesity rates, and why do you think they have been widely adapted?"
So there have been the move to policy can be difficult, and we try not to go so much in terms of, being that paternalistic and put policy, but let people comfortable make these choices. When you do that, I think it is a bit more sustainable. But there have been in the school environment where schools have implemented where you can't bring sugary beverages. Some schools have gone in that direction, that they've said no sugary beverages. You need to have water, you need to have healthy food. Some have encourage healthy snacks, and they've put in place where maybe once a week or twice a week they encourage children to bring fruits instead of these processed snacks. Outside of the school environment, there have been policies in some countries in terms of importation of certain types of foods, and they've actually increased taxes on certain food. But again, it becomes very difficult because when you do that, again, if you tax this, then there is also the political implication that one has to consider. So it's even more than just policy. It's a lot of public health, and public health issues are not that simple. There is a lot of times the political implication, and the politicians are the policymakers, and so they are also thinking of their elections and so on. So they cannot make plans that on policies that are not that are unpopular with the population. But we do, we do push for for policies to reduce some of these risk factors, to encourage more physical activity, not only just sports in school, but in the communities where you can provide parks, where you can provide equipment so that communities can participate in physical activities.
Yes. So thank you, Dr. Adams, for your extensive answer. But we have to be mindful of the time. We have to move on to the next speaker. So I will ask you to type the answers to the other questions that are still in the Q&A, and then we can move on. Yes?
Thank you for okay. Thank you, Victoria. As Dr. Rosman, as Victoria mentioned, please continue to monitor the Q&A box for questions and feel free to type in your answers. It is now time to introduce our second speaker of the evening. After we heard about the status on childhood obesity in the world, Ms. Francine Charles will tell us that there is light on the horizon, and the light is provided by civil society organizations working to stem the tide, help bring the increase to a halt, turn the trend into the opposite direction. Ms. Francine Charles is a communications professional with over 28 years of experience in the fields of journalism, broadcast media, public relations, and communication strategy, with a strong leaning towards development and regional projects. A Trinidadian national, Ms. Charles started off her career at CZN TV6 in Trinidad and Tobago before moving to Barbados in 1993 to work at the Caribbean Broadcasting Union and Caribbean Media Corporation, respectively. She has since consulted with a range of organizations, including the Foundation of the Development of Caribbean Children, FDCC, the Caribbean Development Bank, CDC, the University of the West Indies, Cave Hill Campus, and United Insurance. From 2019, Ms. Charles took up her current post as a full-time consultant with the Heart and Stroke Foundation of Barbados in the capacity of program manager for its childhood obesity prevention program, which also serves as the secretariat for the Barbados Childhood Obesity Prevention Coalition. In this capacity, Ms. Charles has been involved in the advocacy for World Health Organization event-based policies to reduce childhood obesity in Barbados, battle against non-communicable diseases. Ms. Charles has served on the Queen Elizabeth Hospital Health and Wellness Commission and currently represents civil society on the Barbados School Nutrition Policy Implementation Committee. She was also the co-founder and chair of the Barbados registered My Child and I charity, dedicated to effective parenting education. Ms. Charles, you have the Zoom.
Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for an excellent presentation, Dr. Adams, and you've really set a very strong regional foundation for my discussion, which will use the Barbadian context as a case study to kind of really drill down into some practical activities. I want to first congratulate the Rotary on taking up this particular mandate towards the reduction of childhood obesity prevention. We've had the pleasure of working with the Rotary clubs in Barbados, both on the school gardening program and also on some physical fitness promotional activities. And so you've been doing great work, and I am really glad to be here. What I'd like to do is to really, as I said, use the Barbadian context, because as Dr. Adams spoke, it is very clear, and also on the work that we have been doing across the region with other CSOs, that pretty much our stories are very similar. So Dr. Adams used the regional data of 1 in 3 children, and Barbados stands right there as one with 1 in 3 children considered overweight and obese. Tied now to the NCD epidemic, which is why we imagine that the obesity issue is so significant, is that there's 1 in 5 adults in Barbados already has diabetes. 1 in 3 adults has hypertension, and 8 out of our 10 deaths annual are due to NCDs. In Barbados, and Dr. Adams talked about the financial implications. We lose $375 million, and these are fairly old statistics, really, but we lose $375 million annually, directly and indirectly due to NCDs, and the indirect costs tend to refer mainly to the issues of lack of productivity in the workplace. This is Barbados' story. This is what we look like on the global stage. The red area speaks to sugar-sweetened beverages consumption. And in Barbados, from the age of between 5 to about the age of 30, we are seeing that Barbados's consumption of sugar-sweetened beverages is 3 times the global average. So we have an issue of significant proportions. In response to this epidemic, and someone, I think it was Viaz, who spoke about it, the COVID was a rapid pandemic, but it is clear that childhood obesity and NCDs are slow pandemics arriving on our shores. And as a result of that, in our efforts to begin to work more assiduously towards some kind of intervention, as Viaz shared, was that we started a coalition in 2019. We currently have 30 civil society organizations involved. While Rotary has partnered with us significantly on a number of things, we look forward to seeing their logo here as well, because service clubs are definitely invited to be involved. We also have a number of individual experts who have come on in the area of nutrition and the legal area. But what we have found is that we've pulled together both the health sector and non-health sector players to be able to champion, and we can talk about this later. Another component of our civil society movement has been to incorporate our young people. Right now, we have about 50 active young people, mainly from the University of the West Indies at Cave Hill campus, a lot of them in medical faculty, nutrition, who have come on, and their passion and their volunteerism has been critical in the movement that we are seeing in Barbados in terms of changes and moves and the call for policy being taken fairly seriously. So far, coming out of the work we have been doing in 2019, and obviously this work has also been going on long before, but I think there has been a very specific wave that has come along with greater support from international partners and funding. We've seen a 20% sugar sweetened beverage tax implemented April 2022. We are now moving, and earlier this year, we saw government beginning to talk about excise taxes on salty products. The school nutrition policy was implemented in April 2023 on a phased basis, and we'll talk about that. That's going to be our major case study today. And then the octagonal front of package warning labels, as you know, that has been a regional discussion because of the nature of standards. What we have found in Barbados, we won the local vote. Civil society was able to gain a lot of support for people to say, yes, we want the octagonal warning labels. However, at the regional level, we lost overall. Only 5 countries accepted that the octagonal was the best warning label. And so right now that issue is out, is at bay. And then, of course, for us now, the one that we are pushing very strongly on is a ban on marketing and promotion in schools, because the psychological impact of marketing, the far outweighs, education, because education looks at facts, but marketing and promotion really deals with a lot of emotional interplay. And so we are saying that if you're going to remove products from the schools, then that marketing and promotion also needs to be significantly regulated. So how are we doing it? And this is really how I want to put forward, because our work has been very focused on policy, but policy, you cannot advocate for policy without also looking at a strong educational approach. And so what we have done as civil society, this looks at how the roles that we can play is to use the data and evidence to create a unified message. What we have found is that there's a lot of talk on the data, but you have to pull that data together. And as a result of that, we pulled the CSOs, the civil society organizations together, and we've used this data to advocate and to educate in order to influence the national discourse. And I think that has really been a significant role of civil society across this region. How do we change the national discourse so that people are thinking about the issue? And if people are thinking about the issues, the politicians also begin to think about the issues in a different way. And then we've also then done a lot of practical and grassroots work. And what we have found, and I think it's an important role that civil society can play, is to model the activities. So in our case, we wanted to call for a ban on sugar sweetened beverages in schools. So what we did, we found a few schools, 6 schools that were already interested, and we created a model where we actually took the beverages out of the schools on the principal's command. And then we worked with various stakeholders within the schools to do the education. And what came out of this was that not only did it show government and others, it can be done. It just calls for strong leadership within your school environment, in this case, the principals and their boards. But then what it also did, as we began to look at the stakeholder engagement in preparation for the policy, the model school process was used as a lessons learned. So we pulled out various lessons, and PAHO was able to include that in some of the work and suggestions for how the policy should evolve. And then, of course, development of strong youth involvement via capacity development, build up our young people. Dr. Adams made a very important point. Our policymakers are also politicians, and the youth represent the future, and their voices, therefore, matter. And so we felt, and I know that you have a strong Rotaract, we have had involvement of some of the significant young Rotarians. So we know the power that they can yield. So this is what our schools look like, and I'm sure it's across the board. As you can see, this was an audit that was done in 2019 among 15 primary schools and 9 secondary schools in Barbados. And it showed that the products that were most accessible, that were most being made available to the children, whether it was inside of the school environment or right on the outside, were really sugar sweetened beverages and snacks. And it brings up the point that the environment matters. So you teach your children, and we've seen this. We go into the schools, we educate the children, and then they run out to the canteens and break, and there is nothing there that lines up with what we have just taught them to be the healthier option. And if it is, it probably is not as attractive or definitely not as affordable. So this was the 6 schools that we brought on. This is how we actually did a signing with them, almost like an MOU, and brought them into the process, and then worked with all of their various stakeholders. We ensured that we took the coalition took the messages to the media. We engaged media significantly. We held meetings and conferences with key technocrat groups. And then, of course, we engaged our young people. And then a critical part of civil society, and the Rotary Club, I know, has been a significant proponent of this kind of work. But we not just talk the talk. It's very important that civil society shows that it is walking the talk. And during COVID, we know that most of the hampers that we saw around the countries really contained a lot of ultra-processed foods, tinned and canned foods. And so what we did was engage farming communities. And as a coalition, we got donations of fruits and vegetables. And we then worked with one of the ministries, I think it was the Ministry of Social Care, to be able to identify people who were living with NCDs who needed to have access to fruits and vegetables. And then we did, over a number of weeks, a drop-off to various families. And so these things build your sense of authoritative voice within your communities as a civil society. The youth do it differently. They're very strong on social media, where you know everyone is. They're very prone to being able to take it to the streets if they have to, as they did at the University of the West Indies. As you can see here, some of the young people making their voices heard. And then they also spent a lot of time writing articles, talking about the need to stop the marketing of unhealthy foods in schools. And so the post-implementation collaboration, just want to make sure that I'm staying on time. What we found was that after you push for policy and you do the education, there has to be follow-up. And sometimes as civil society, we kind of reach that finishing goal and kind of move on to something else. But what we found was that there was need, especially with the school nutrition policy, and for all the reasons Dr. Adams gave in terms of health policy being difficult, was that there must be post-implementation collaboration, and civil society is critical here. I represent civil society at this point on the School Nutrition Policy Implementation Committee, and that was a very good sign that there was a multi-stakeholder approach to the implementation embedded within the policy. And so various groups are represented currently, and I imagine that they are planning to expand. We also now provide ongoing education in the schools and also some key stakeholder training, which I will share. We provide technical assistance with the SNP compliance. So there's obviously a technical system that has to be set up with the regulation of snacks and drinks and foods within the schools, because obviously you can't go cold turkey. In one day, you're not going to pull everything out of the schools. So what the government has done is a phase basis approach. And what our technical persons do, nutritionists and medical doctors, is that they have identified the products that are considered good alternatives. The industry sends in their products that fall under those nutrition guidelines, and we identify a compliant list that is then shared with the vendors, shared with parents as to what can come into the schools as we move towards a cleaner and cleaner environment. And then, of course, we continue to drive support for strengthening the policy. Civil society must never lose its watchdog mandate. And so we always say to the policymakers that we will support you, but we will never lose sight of the goal. And so there are times when we will step back and become watchdogs again, and we've continued to do that. In 2024, one of the ways that civil society can play a role, we realized that there was a policy, but no implementation plan for this phased approach. And so civil society offered the Ministry of Education, can we set up a stakeholder workshop for 2 days where we work through, hear all the various views of the stakeholders and come up with an implementation plan. And so that is really just assisting them in in putting some, some teeth to the program. We've also, in the picture below, we've also trained about 60 school meals cooks. We've also done the school meals servers. And so those are areas where we could set up the events, we bring in the experts, and we allow the stakeholders to be trained. And then one of our things that we're very, very, I would say in a way proud of is the work that our youth have done, peer-to-peer advocacy. And they started something in 2024 called the Cool School Tours, where every Tuesday and Thursday, our young people, they're working in at the hospital, or they're trying to get their degrees in their various areas, but they take their time out and they spend an hour in various schools across the country. We've done 76 schools out of the 115 or 17 schools that currently exist. And they spend an hour training the children and talking to them about healthy lifestyle and using interactive games, including Jeopardy games, to kind of bring this need for a healthier lifestyle to life. This is just an example of what we have done in terms of the S&P compliance. So these ads go out in the newspapers telling the manufacturers so that we ensure that we engage all stakeholders. This is what these are the nutrient profiles that exist in the schools. Can you meet it? Our nutritionists have also produced for the canteens, not just the rules that you're only supposed to do certain meals, but they've actually put together what those meals look like. And we do a canteen concessionaires training where we're able to show them, how do you make certain foods a little healthier than they currently are. This was our most recent piece of work. And I think we talked about the politicians, but finding the champions. And currently we have, our Minister of Educational Transformation has made civil society extremely happy and has stood as a very strong champion to the work. But of course, those are things that are built. So we recently took to the streets because one of the areas we have found is that we need to do more and more to engage with the public so that the discourse and in ways that attract the public and that truly engage them. So we have been kind of moving slowly into various approaches that we hope and that we believe can bring higher visibility to the issue. And so just as we close, some lessons learned. First of all, we found, and I think this is what the work that I shared, I hope it has shown, that civil society is stronger together. And when I say that, the multi-sectoral approach, if it is health, it has to be more than health that's working on it. So the media is interested. Clubs that are involved in sports, they're interested, and kind of bring all these groups together to see how we can advance this particular goal. One of the challenges we have found along the way is that civil society needs to tackle its own conflict of interest challenges. Because of the need for funding, you find that sometimes civil society engages with some of the same players that we are asking to please, discontinue or discontinue activities within the schools in particular, because obviously we know that they are still functioning businesses. And so we're working on that. We've done some capacity development. Healthy Caribbean Coalition has been very, very involved in helping to do this work across the region and help us to understand how the issue of conflict of interest works and how we navigate the environs of working with all the stakeholders that are involved. And then the final one for us, the service clubs tend to have a very powerful reputations. And what we have found is that the influence and the influencers and champions are critical to the policy process and to the education process. And what I have seen and wanted to throw out is that service clubs can even be even more effective by adding its strength to the existing advocacy efforts, not just starting and implementing and initiating, but also looking at what is in place already and coming alongside those projects to strengthen them with both your voice, your volunteerism, and your passion. And I close here and really thank you for this opportunity and wish you all the very best as an organization. Please continue to do the work that you've been doing. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Charles. Um, I commend you for your work. I am a firm believer that we as a civil society, including service clubs, must work together in a fight against childhood obesity. I again invite Victoria Morpurgo to lead us through the Q&A session. Victoria, I hand over to you.
Yes, thank you, Vias. Thank you, Ms. Francine Charles, for your presentation. Again, I think people are a bit shy, so I'm going to start off with the questions. So you spoke about, I saw a slide about no policy without youth. So no policy about youth without youth.
Nothing for the youth without the youth.
Without the youth, yeah. So Rotary has a youth wing. We have the Rotaract and the Interact. So how, in your opinion, can these groups be used or involved in what is already happening with youth involvement in childhood obesity prevention?
I think there are two ways. In one case, you may find that in countries, for example, in Barbados, where we already have a youth coalition working, I think adding the Rotarians to that process, they having their areas that they're working on, but also being a voice. Our youth have had opportunity to meet with the ministers one-on-one with them alone. And could you imagine a room in which you have strong and influential Rotaract persons involved? In fact, one of your young Rotarians was our mass media campaign officer, and she recently went off on a Chevening scholarship. And I will tell you, her involvement in those meetings were significant because of the exposure and experience she's had through Rotary. And because what you find is that in dealing with government, there must be a sense of not just being young, but being young and clear and mission focused. And so I think that's one. And I think in countries where there is no youth voice, because right now I'll tell you, we work with a number of CSOs across the region and the technocrats. This morning we had a meeting of a network of the health and education technocrats that are working on this. And one of the things is that they're finding it hard to create the national discourse. They're working in their silos, we're working within internally, but to get that thing to a place where both the people and as a result, the governments are really listening. Because there are people with policies, school nutrition policies, that have been getting dust on them since 2015, and they can't find the voice. So to me, in countries where that exists, it would be awesome if the Rotary, as a youth, the Rotaract group, can be that voice. They just start that coalition and they may be able to pull other young people together. So it's still multi-sectoral and become that voice across the region.
Perfect. Thank you. Speaking of Rotaractors, hey, Anastasia White from the Rotaract Club of Kingstown says, Caribbean people can sometimes be stubborn about change, especially when it comes to food and lifestyle. Rotaract clubs can make posters, share videos about why obesity is harmful, but how can we be more intentional, creative, and bold in raising real awareness that actually inspires action and shift in mindset? And when you faced pushback or resistance in similar health campaigns, how did you deal with it and keep people engaged?
Absolutely. It is tough work. There's no doubt about it, because unlike tobacco, which everyone kind of agreed is really bad and it already looks bad, but food is close to people's hearts, right? And it becomes culture. So what we have found is that as young people, I think an important piece of the work is peer-to-peer advocacy, where you are maybe set up a program to meet young people in schools in small groups, where you can talk to them and have that dialogue, as opposed to just keeping it kind of wide, keeping your advocacy wide. Maybe bring your advocacy closer. Try to find other youth. For example, climate change youth are very, very interested in health as well. They may not even realize it, but climate and health are interrelated. Maybe dovetail with those groups and begin to build a more massive groundswell. What we recently did was also to start having our young people to find where communities are speaking. So recently here in Barbados, the government has this program where they're going from parish to parish and they're engaging the public, something called an ideas forum. And what we did, we went to one parish and we scoped it out, how it works, what it looks like. And then we organized for the next parish speaks. We were there and we had our presentation and we stood up and did what we had to do. And the prime minister was there and she was able to speak. And I think it's finding strategic things like that young people, because what young people can do is say what nobody else can say. And so they are a powerful group. So I would say look for much more strategic interventions, and also try to do a gap analysis as to why is this not, where do we need to be talking? For us, the gap analysis for sure is with our parents, and we are still trying to find those curves. And in the case of pushback, it is simply a matter of pressing forward. It sounds simple, but what we have found in the areas of pushback with the government where we can't get calls, and I'll give you an example where young people can get involved. So we were having an issue at one point where the policy was being considered, the school nutrition policy, but then there was this sudden delay, it wasn't really coming to pass. And our young people got onto the digital media and had one day of strategic Twitter storm, where they just started talking about the issue. Where is the policy? What's happening? And by that afternoon, we received an email from the ministry saying, can we come and talk about, it's time for us to talk about moving to the next step. And so it is not, we speak about it, but it is also very possible. And so especially in our small societies where we do have voice, there are large countries where it's very, very difficult to find voice, but in our smaller territories, we have voice. It is just about being strategic about it. And so young people can use digital media very well, maybe IG Lives, just find ways to start the national discourse.
I love it. Well, thank you. Anastasia is very grateful, she says, because fitness and health is a passion of hers. So she loves this session. Yeah. Passion of mine as well, Anastasia. Thank you. So another question from Liz Cox. What approach did you use to get to the government, to get it so involved with COP? The canteen idea is excellent. Guyana needs this.
Well, with the canteens, I'll start there first. That was one of the very first groups that we started work with in 2019. We started holding free training sessions for them. And that's something I know, the Rotary can do. We got a school. We didn't even start in a hotel or anything. We got a school and we opened it up on a Saturday, I think. And we invited the canteens to come to the meetings, letting them know that change is coming. Right? The schools cannot stay the way it is. And they started coming and they would attend. We would do different things, showing them how to do stuff. It's not just the issues, but how. How do you make drink that, is not full of sugar? How do you make meals, wraps, as opposed to the usual, fried chicken or whatever? And then we also allowed them to start sharing some of their own initiatives and innovations. And that every year they started looking forward to it. And by the time we got to the school nutrition policy, they hurt really badly in the first year of this policy, because now all your drinks and sugar sweetened beverages were out the door, but they were able to stand strong, some of them, and they've been able to be pushed forward. And they actually started the Canteen Concessioners Association. They never worked together like that before, but started an association so that they can help each other with ideas, etc. In terms of the government, one of the critical things is having presentations ready that had a lot of evidence in it. The data showing that we know, because they probably know the data, but now we know the data and the public's going to know the data. And we would ask for meetings. A key thing is to find the champion technocrats in the ministries that are relevant. Because in those ministries, there are people passionate like Victoria about health. Usually it's somebody involved in the nutrition component of the education system, someone inside of the nutrition persons inside of the Ministry of Health. You find them and then they start helping you, to engage and to get a meeting. And sometimes you wouldn't hear from the ministers for a while, but we just kept sending notes again, an email again. Can we have a meeting? until one time we actually just, well, not one person, we went up to the and we went up to the office to say what's happening. And that's, you sometimes have to do those things. But what we found is that when you go to the government, two things: have the data to make your argument, but also show them how you can help. Because, they're strapped for resources, there are various struggles that they're seeing internally, but how can we help? And show them, that what we are prepared to do.
Yes. So if there's anything we've learned is that consistency is key in this tackling COP. I think we have reached our time. So maybe yes, there's another question, but maybe that could be answered through the chat.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Victoria, again. Ms. Francis, also to you the request to please continue to monitor the Q&A box for questions and feel free to type in your responses. So, ladies and gentlemen, the time on the clock tells me we have come to the end of this lecture. It has been my pleasure to be your Master of Ceremonies, and I thank the COP program lead for this opportunity. I invite past District Governor Sonia to bring closing remarks, give the vote of thanks, and officially close the session. PDG Sonia, I hand over to you.
Thank you, VS. Every time we have lectures like this, it really makes my heart swell, because we know that Rotary has been very, very instrumental in making these noises about childhood obesity. It's important for us to continue the fight. DG Soraya spoke about it being a district initiative, and it's going to be that for a while until we can definitely see definite change in the population. So I'm a proud Rotarian for us to be involved in childhood obesity. It is my privilege this evening to thank both Rosamond and Francine for their perspectives on what we're doing. Francine from the local Barbados perspective, and Rosamond regionally. These two people, we could not have asked for better speakers tonight. The passion and their knowledge and expertise has really lifted us to the next level. And we thank you for your time. We thank you for your amazing presentations. And we know that we can count on you. Rosamond, you're a recurring decimal for us. You're always here helping us to bring the news. And Francine, thank you. You're now a new friend of Rotary District 7030. You're our friend in Barbados, but we certainly, from a district perspective, you now belong to us. So thank you. Thank you very much. VS, thanks for shepherding us through this evening, and Victoria for monitoring the chat and coordinating the Q&A. We, of course, must thank Virginia, our COP lead, for all the work she has done in making this happen. Sessions like this don't happen overnight. Many weeks, sleepless nights, colds and coughs, and we're all, Virginia is plugging away and keeping us all on our toes, making sure that we're here and that we're on time and that we're making sure we say the right things when we're ready. So Virginia, thank you for as usual, your dedication to childhood obesity. Of course, we cannot do these things without our interpreters, Evelyn and Paul. They make us available to all the members of our district. So thank you to them for helping us with interpretation this evening. Our technical guru, Sean, who, of course, made sure that we sounded and we looked good tonight. So Sean, thank you. And Sean has been working alongside Virginia all the way in making sure that tonight happened and happened in a big way, in very professional circumstances. And of course, this doesn't happen without you, the members of our Rotary District 7030 and our friends. Thank you for joining this evening. We know that any evening is a busy evening. A Wednesday evening, 7 o'clock is not easy. And of course, in different time zones, in Suriname, it was 8 o'clock, so it's late. And we really appreciate everybody for coming on. So it's just for me to say thank you very much to all. And as usual, it's a privilege to be with you this evening. And I want to declare this session closed and thank our presenters again. And everybody, go have a drink. It's the end of the night. A healthy drink, okay? A healthy drink, folks. No alcohol. Don't. Ah! All right. Thanks. Night, night, everybody. Take care.